Hello students, welcome to AriserTalent. As you know, we are studying very important chapter of NCERT, that is life processes, in which we are talking about the respiration. In my previous class, I told you about the respiration in animals, that different animals have different respiratory organs to breathe, okay, or to respire. Now we are going to talk about the respiration in humans. So here we go. Yes, we can see the respiratory system here of the human being, okay. So here, as you can see the structure, I must say that this is the respiratory tract of human, okay. So this respiratory tract of human is divided into three parts. What are they? Here we can mention that the respiratory tract of human is divided into three parts. Okay, what are they? Upper respiratory tract, upper respiratory tract. Okay, then lower respiratory tract, lower respiratory tract, and respiratory muscles. Third part is respiratory muscles. Okay, so if we talk about this first part, that is upper respiratory tract, so come here in the image, let me explain you. This complete part is known as upper respiratory tract, which contains nasal cavity, means nose, pharynx and larynx. So here we can mention that the upper respiratory tract has three parts. These are nose, it consists of nose, pharynx and larynx, okay. So here we can say that this part here till here, this is known as upper respiratory tract. Now we can see that from the larynx it is following by the trachea. So here we can say that the lower respiratory tract consists trachea, bronchi and bronchioles, okay. So what are the organs of respiratory lower respiratory tract? They are trachea, bronchi and bronchioles. Okay. Now if we talk about respiratory muscle, so here we can see this diaphragm. This is the structure. This diaphragm is muscular in shape or muscular in structure. So here this diaphragm is known as respiratory muscles. So respiratory muscles consist of diaphragm. This is diaphragm. Okay, so thus we can say that the human respiratory system or human respiratory tract is divided into three parts. One is upper respiratory tract, another is lower respiratory tract and third one is respiratory muscle, that is diaphragm. So let's begin with it. Upper respiratory tract. Okay, here we can see that a pair of nostril is present here. Okay, so air enters into the nostril. This nostril opens, a pair of nostril open in the nasal cavity. This is, we are talking about the respiratory tract, okay. So here nostrils open in the nasal cavity. This nasal cavity is highly vascularized and bears hair and mucus glands, okay. Now what happens, this nasal cavity leads to the pharynx. Here we can see this part is known as pharynx, okay. So this pharynx is almost 12 centimeter long, tube like structure, okay, which is followed by the larynx, okay. Now what happens, whatever we eat, that time this part has an opening, okay, then whatever we eat or swallow, that time an epiglottis, a layer which is known as epiglottis, get closed. Generally, this epiglottis remains open every time, but when we swallow something, then this epiglottis get closed. Okay, now we can say that pharynx is lead to the larynx. Now, here we can see that larynx is leading or is followed by the trachea. Trachea is also known as windpipe. Okay, it's also known as windpipe. Windpipe has ciliated structures. Now, this trachea is again divided into two parts, that is known as bronchi, and bronchi leads into the bronchioles. Clear? This bronchi again leads into the two spongy muscular lungs. Here we can see these are the lungs. Okay. Now, let me explain you the structure of lung. This is all about the tract, respiratory tract. Now, we will talk about the structure of lung. Yes, here we are with the structure of lung. Here we can see a pair of lung is in front of us. Right lung and left lung. Generally, this left lung has two lobes. Here we can see one lobe and two lobes. Okay, but right lung has three lobes. 1, 2, 3. Right lung is larger than the left lung. Okay, so here we can say that a spongy bag-like structure is the lung, or we have a pair of lung which is spongy and bag-like structure. Fine. Left lung has only two lobes and it is smaller than the right lung. Clear? So it is all about the structure of lung. Come back to the respiratory tract. First of all, let me mention here all about the respiratory tract. As I told you, it is divided into three parts. So here we will start with the nostril. Okay, so nostril, we can say a pair of nostril is present in humans. A pair of nostril is present in the humans, which opens in nasal cavity, Okay, clear? Now, if we talk about this nasal cavity, then this nasal cavity has or it is highly vasculated. It is highly vascularized, bears hair and mucus gland. Fine. Mucus is secreted by this mucus gland. Mucus is secreted by mucus gland. Now, what happens here? We can see when the air enters in the nasal cavity through the nostrils. Now, as I told you, it bears hair and it has some mucus present inside it. Now, the air enters through the nostril, get warm here in the nasal cavity, as well as whatever the dust is present, it is absorbed by the mucus only. Okay, so we can say that the air becomes fresh now, and then the fresh air enters into the pharynx. Clear? So, it is highly vascularized, bears hair and mucus gland. Mucus is secreted by the mucus gland only. Air in the nasal cavity, or air get warm here. Let me mention, air gets warmed here and becomes dust free, okay, because dust particle get attached with the mucus and makes the air dust free. Clear? Now what happens? Next part is pharynx. Next we will talk about the pharynx. Okay, so here we can see pharynx is 12 centimeter long, a tubular structure is there. Okay, let me mention, the pharynx is about 12 centimeter long. Okay, pharynx is about 12 centimeter long and opens into the larynx. Okay, and leads into larynx. Fine. Generally larynx is open, but sometimes when we swallow something, it gets closed by the epiglottis. Epiglottis is a thin slit present there. Now let me tell you the respiratory tract. What happens, students, when the air enters in the nostril, then it goes into the nasal cavity, it get warm and become dust free, then it goes to the pharynx, pharynx to larynx, and larynx to it goes into the trachea. Okay, now what is trachea? Here we can see trachea is a tubular structure which divides into two bronchi. It is also known as, it is a tube and also known as windpipe. Okay, it's a tube and also known as windpipe. Trachea divides into two bronchi. Okay, it divides into two bronchi. Here we can see trachea is long tubular structure which divides into two bronchi, and these bronchi leads into a pair of spongy bag-like structures called lungs. Okay, now we will talk about the lungs. Next is lungs. So as I shown you the image of lungs, let me repeat it. Yes, so here you can see the image of lungs, a pair of spongy lungs are present in the human. Okay, next, right lung has three lobes, whereas left lung has 2 lobes. Okay, fine, it has 2 lobes, and thus we can say left lobe is smaller than the right lobe. Left lung is smaller than the right lung. Clear? So now it is clear to you that left lung has only 2 lobes, right lung have 3 lobes, and the left lung is smaller than the right lung. Clear? So this is all about the respiratory tract. As I shown you last image, previous image, let's come to the previous image. As here we can see that these bronchioles are open into the alveoli, and these alveoli are the main places of exchange of gases in the lungs. Okay, so let me mention, alveoli are the places of exchange of gases in the lungs. This is very important point. Alveoli, these are the structures, or we can say this is the structural or functional unit of the lung and responsible for the exchange of gases. Okay, so these are the structural and functional, these are the structural and functional, just a minute, these are the structural and functional unit of lungs. These are the site of exchange of gases. Okay, so these alveoli are responsible for exchange of gases in the humans, or we can say in the lungs. This is all about the respiratory tracts in the human. Now let me explain you this in the short, that what is the actual respiratory tract in the humans. What we have studied here, that air enters through the nostrils. Okay, so let me explain you through the linear diagram. Air enters through the nostril. Okay, then it goes into the nasal cavity. Nasal cavity to it goes into the pharynx, and from pharynx it goes to the larynx. Okay, larynx to trachea. Trachea means windpipe. From trachea to bronchi. Okay, bronchi to lungs or bronchioles. And from it goes into the alveoli. And these alveoli are the main site of exchange of gases. So this is the complete respiratory system in the humans. As I told you that exchange of gases take place in the alveoli. Now how this exchange of gases take place, let me explain you what happens. Here we can see in the diagram that inhaled air, as I told you that air enters from the nostril, goes into the nasal cavity, from where pharynx it goes into the larynx, trachea to goes into the bronchi, and from bronchioles it goes into the alveoli. Okay, now what happens, the inhaled air, this inhaled air is having higher concentration of oxygen. Okay, now what happens, that oxygen get mixed with the blood. It enters into the blood or it diffuses in the blood. Now in the blood, first it get mixed with the blood plasma, then only it goes into the hemoglobin and forms oxyhemoglobin. Okay, now at that time in the blood, concentration of carbon dioxide is higher than the alveoli. Now that carbon dioxide is released here in the alveoli, and then it has released into the water, because generally carbon dioxide get easily dissolved in the water than the oxygen, then it is passed out of the body. Okay, now let me explain it here or by the notes. Let me give you the notes. Exchange of gases in the alveoli. As I told you, that was the tract of respiratory system or tract of respiration. Now exchange of gases in the alveoli. Okay. So as I told you, the alveoli is the main site of exchange of gases. Let me mention exchange of gases. Exchange of gases take place in the alveoli. Inhaled air has higher concentration of oxygen higher concentration of the oxygen than that in the blood. Okay, as we all know that things move from the higher concentration to the lower concentration by the process of diffusion. So here we can mention the oxygen get dissolved in the blood, or oxygen enters in the blood through the diffusion, or this oxygen diffuses in the blood. Okay, it enters in blood plasma. First it enters into the blood plasma, then get mixed with hemoglobin and forms oxyhemoglobin. Okay, fine. Carbon dioxide, which was there in the blood in higher concentration, that is released into the alveoli and then it is exhaled out. Okay, carbon dioxide which was there in the blood in higher concentration enters into the which was there in the blood in higher concentration enters into the alveoli. Okay, or is exhaled out there in the blood in higher concentration, is exhaled, or we can mention is expelled from the blood in the alveoli. Okay, thus carbon dioxide is released out from the body. This carbon dioxide is exhaled out from the body. this carbon dioxide is exhaled out of the body. Clear? Thus we can say that the alveoli is the site of exchange of gases in the human beings. Clear? So this is all about the respiratory tract in the humans and exchange of gases in the alveoli. Hope everything is clear to you. Thank you.